A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi. A major riot broke out in Lira, ending a week of tension following the death of a young man named Okello. And some of the tensions that were rising in Lira and the demonstration yesterday, one tackled the response of the police, but also the people alleged to have led to the death of this young man. Also, near Kampala, a young lady, graduate of Makerere University Business School, is murdered in her rental house in Bugolobi, and those who found the body found it tied to the bed, and whoever murdered her also attempted to set the house on fire, apparently to kill evidence. The bigger question we have to deal with is this goes beyond crime. It also deals with how society has responded. Some of these are almost being numb to death, not being shocked anymore by what is going on. What is the problem with society is what we should be trying to discuss. Not so much the element of crime, and we spend a lot of time discussing government response or action or inaction, but that doesn't discuss our society. In the next 1.5 hours, or however much time we have here, we'll be discussing that. To discuss that with me tonight, I have Onapito Ekomoloit, Corporate and Legal Affairs Director at Nile Breweries, AB InBev. Very nice to have you, Ona.
Charles, taking a bit of a
Yes, you've been in Ajono land. I don't know how much better things are in the larger Teso sub-region, whether people are more responsive, whether people feel about other people dying, but we'll be discussing that. We have Atia Tolit. Atia Tolit is a PhD and security analyst. Dr. Tolit, very nice to have you.
Thank you and good evening, viewers.
Rosebel Kagumire is a journalist, blogger, and women's rights activist. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
And we have Henry Nixon Ogwal. Henry Nixon Ogwal is a human rights defender and the director at Action Aid International, Uganda. Very nice to have you, Henry.
Thank you, Charles.
Let me start with you, Onapito, and I want to start with Onapito. I come to Rosebel. There was a debate earlier today on a journalist platform. The bigger question was, why has the media walked away from highlighting some of these stories as important national stories when they happen?
Well, Charles, I think media is a reflection of society. I mean, we all grew up in the families where everyone else grows us from. So the same sentiments that the rest of society has, the media has. You tend to be attuned. Especially we tend to report for the audience. So when you realize that the audience is not seeing this as a big story, you tend to move on to other things. And I think I'm not a sociologist. I studied sociology many years ago, but I think our society is certainly going through one of the most tumultuous stages. Maybe it's all akin to the advent of colonialism. I think there is a major turn in the society which is characterized by pseudo-consumerism. Consumerism is the illusion of wanting so many things. I call it pseudo because we want so many things and we don't have the money to chase for these things. So people are really restless. They are chasing for so many things. The old society where there was compassion and really feeling for your neighbor and being so beaten by one happening about like somebody has died, people used to. Of course, people still gather, but you find most of the funerals are not the saddest occasion. Often it's about meeting other people, it's about, more
So
like
it's another social gathering.
But those days there was real people throw themselves on the ground in many societies, tear their clothes apart. There was really a lot of anguish. So increasingly we are becoming almost a cynical society. But of course, in Uganda we are also going through decades of turmoil, which is just sort of ending. In places like the north and where people died like flies, I know a very high-placed person in this country, if I want to name, who says, in Luero, I lost feeling for people. I saw death. and it doesn't shock me anymore. So,
someone said they can't get to
so a lot of generations, for example, in the north, grew up in the IDPs, and they saw death literally. People die in front of the eyes of young people, and those are now the adults of today. So it's a very, we really need some healing, so to say.
I want to stay with you a little bit more on the journalism side of it, on the reporting side of it. The responsibility. I was having a discussion with my producer, earlier today when I'm planning for the show. He said, if journalism is supposed to report scale, what shocks now is scale, but even that is not enough. And I keep going back to two examples. Kasese stands as one of the major ones, but Kasese actually overshadowed, I think, an even bigger killing in Bundibujo the year before. Now, nobody talks about the massacre in Bundibujo over those agitations. We all talk about Kasese, but even Kasese now has receded to the bucket. Do you think journalism has a bigger responsibility to highlight these things if the reader we think about that Ona is talking about, the viewer, is not going to feel as concerned?
First of all, I'm not agreeing that people, Ugandans, are not feeling. Maybe the reaction might change due to what is happening, the breakdown in the rule of law, the trust in the system that people can be helped. Even when we say outside, for example, the greater northern Uganda where the war was, and everything, there was some semblance of outside that actually we could go to a police station at some point and somebody could listen to you. That semblance that the society, that we have a certain social contract, a social obligation towards each other, seems to have broken down. Like we are really towards the bottom of this. And what journalism needs to do now, it has even the greater responsibility right now to tie society together, to tie those, to give us the connecting dots. Why is all this happening? It is the job, the noble cause of journalism to give us why is this happening. It's not supposed to give us solutions because it's not the role of the journalist to give you a solution, but it is the role of the journalist to explain why things are going on and seek out the voices that are able to help why we are where we are. So we should not cover the death in Lira in isolation. When someone dies and our police comes in to quell the situation, and you have 5 more people shot, and the next hospital they have to be brought in is Mulago Hospital. Those are all connecting dots where what is the situation we are actually operating in. That lack of trust in the system, if the system exists, and many people will tell you the system is no longer there.
Is it the system that's broken, or is it society that's broken? Dr. Tolit.
Yeah.
Is that one really for me?
You are the expert.
Really an egg and chick question, if you like. Let me start with picking on or building on what Ona has elaborately put before us. The question that, look, the eco-environment is a capitalist environment. And if you profiled it, the 3 key elements that would come out of it is that it's a rush society, it's a man-eat-man society, and the third one is probably that there is a cream, and usually very small population, if you like, the elitist population, that somehow, holds the piper, blows, and controls. Then if you mirrored this against the media that we are speaking about and try to look at it from the traditional tenets of the media, inform, entertain, educate, you clearly begin to see that there is a distortion. So the central question then would be, what forms the other? Does society form, or do the variables working towards society form what society is? And I think Ona is spot on. The variables at play are giving us a picture of what we are seeing. Because, for instance, look at the competition of how glamour is projected, you know, on television and social media today, and then all these things. These are some of the very grey moments we have. You know, funerals today are even clad with, you know, beautiful tents, chairs. So the semblance of whether you are at your low or at your high in a given circumstance is not very easy to differentiate. But correctly, I want to say that time, you know, sequences people. I want to look elsewhere. Look at, say, Spain, the war of independence in Spain. Look at the Latin Americas, where there were brutal wars, and then come back home. One thing that is obvious is that society can transcend its boundaries. Society can come out of its predicament. But it must be deliberate. And I think that is where the nuts and bolts are lacking in our situation. Because you got to get to a situation where you don't try to forget what you have been through, but you need to come to terms with it. And in coming into terms with it, you try to redefine the future. And that has been ably done, even through studies. For instance, if you look at it from the perspective of justice, take the Northern War or the Rwanda War. You know, you reach to a point where you find that victims and perpetrators are all there. And then you begin to ask yourself, just what system do we have, you know, to be able to heal from this? You can't arrange everybody to court. So the legal and jurisprudence system has grown off a new child today, for instance, called transitional justice. And in transitional justice, there are a couple of steps you take, you know, to sort of realign society. One, for instance, we're talking about lack of trust in police. A recent case is Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, they did what they call purging of the police. It's a process of transitional justice that you reach a point and say, you know, we just don't have trust in this police anymore, and let everybody go home, and we reapply. And that sort of brings back confidence. There's what we call closure. There is an element of memories. You know, so you need to ask yourself, in all these things.
You're talking about closure, Dr. Tolit, and my mind goes to some recent happenings. Somebody's killed, and the first thing you see is a condolence package to enable the family deal with funeral expenses. You don't hear a strong element of that search for closure. Does that actually help get you to closure? You look back a few years ago, there was a fire incident at Namungona when a fuel tanker overturned and incinerated people who were drawing the fuel. The quick response was call some of the families that were victims to that fire and give them some money and tell them, move on with your lives. And the next day you move and there's like nothing happened around that area. Someone, Yasin Kauma, is shot dead by security in the Arua melee that brought us this, what we have now, the by-election to replace the late Ibrahim Abiriga, who was also violently murdered, and a check or cash is sent. I think it was 20 million. Initially we were told it's been rejected, and then another moment it's been, someone else has delivered it and it's been accepted. When you mix, when you put side by side the politics, the society we are in, and the fact that by the next morning, no one is discussing the killing, no one is discussing the bringing of the perpetrators to justice, but everybody is discussing the money and who delivered it. Nixon, I needed to come to you to help me understand. One, to bring us to speed on the specific question of, Dr. Torite, I'll come back to you to answer that question. I need to chew over it a bit. What exactly happened in Lira? What do we know at the moment? Because I know you've followed this a little bit more intimately than maybe some of us have done.
Well, thank you, Charles. Lira, for the last about 2 years, has been going through very serious form of crime that is not handled to the end. And it has therefore reached a level where the local person, and especially it has been affecting mainly the poor people, the people that you would call vulnerable, the young, not well-educated youth that are trying to eke a living, women, and these are the ones that have been killed and, or, you know, they have gone through a lot of violation of their own rights. So what we should be seeing in Lira yesterday is not an isolation. So the bigger Lango sub-region has gone through some stress.
Let's first deal with the particular incident.
And when you look at what happened about a week and a half ago, the story is told, and this is where now the problem starts. The clear narrative is being tampered with, because whatever happened, they were children who were approached by two Indians, adults. And therefore, whatever happened, it seemed like they were trying to entice these children with some sweets, which they refused. Unfortunately,
why were they trying to entice them?
That is what we can't tell yet, because the surviving brother of this child and his statement is being twisted.
We don't know that for a fact.
We don't know
yes.
for a fact what that was. Secondly, the boy himself died, so we can't tell. And his post-mortem is a big issue of debate. So this boy was being chased, so we hear, by these two Indians. And whatever happened, we can't tell, but he was seriously injured that he was taken to Lira Hospital, intensive care. He never survived, he died. The post-mortem was done there, for which me I've not read, but at least the spokesperson of police in the North Kyoga region posted a statement that tended to show what people did not agree with. Some
that
of
he died of a heart attack?
That he died of a heart attack. But when you read the post-mortem report, which at least I've seen, the one of Kampala City Mortuary, it states clearly that the heart, it reached Kampala and was not touched. So I'm not a pathologist, but if it was not touched...
What does the post-mortem report you've seen or you've read say?
The one of Kampala concludes that whatever was the cause of death could not be found in that post-mortem. So I think then it takes us back to Lira. But now this is the situation that has caused a lot of discussions over the week in Lira, and I think the police mishandled it.
Okay.
And because of that mishandling, there was, I think, an attempt to subdue voices of people mourning and at the time of burial, and then there was a clash between the police and the local people, which now ended up in
the demonstration yesterday.
Yes, back to town and all this.
Okay. For the benefit of our viewers who may not have been following this story, a major demonstration or riot situation in Lira yesterday, which is a result of the death of a young man. Apparently, he was with his brother, but the brother survived and ran away. It's raised racial tensions between the Asian Indian community in Lira and the local community there, because they suspect that the death of this boy was caused by these alleged two Asian-looking people. In this country with a very long history with people from Asian extraction, you can't actually assign them an identity as Indian. They may not be Indian. There was a statement from the Pakistani community in Lira that tried to atone by sending relief items to the family to help with the funeral expenses, totaling up to about 3 million shillings. They sent, I think, rice and other items that would be used for at the funeral. And my question was, why would the Pakistani community, for example, be trying to atone for an incident that the locals are blaming on the Indian community? What I wouldn't be able to, what we're not able to tell at this moment, or from what I haven't been able to investigate, is whether we assign the description Indian community just by looking at people and imagining they are, Pakistan and India at once were one country. So maybe we may not be able to know. But
from Bangladesh.
Yeah, could be Bangladesh, Nepal, all those other places.
The
But
stereotype is that is India.
Yes.
Of course, the stereotype doesn't necessarily.
yes, that tells part of the story.
True.
When we come out of the break, we'll be wanting to understand how, for example, would you explain a crime as violent as the murder of this former, just graduated from Makerere University Business School, Kembabazi. Her home district is Rukunjiri, who is killed, and it's suspected she's been killed by a boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend, ties her to her bed, attempts to set the house on fire, and runs away. We'll be right back. You're still watching The Fourth Estate and asking the question, the changing face of crime, why is there a rise in violent crime in the country? I was being reminded as we took the break that there was that horrible fire at Manya SS in Rakai the other day, and from initial investigations, this was not an accidental fire, it was not a short circuit, it was actually arson. So people deliberately blockaded these children in their dormitory and set the dormitories on fire, killing, I think, 9 of them and several others in hospital. The case of the Budo fire was never completely resolved. It came up a little bit again this year with a businessman getting arrested. It was suspected that land wrangles led to that fire in Budo in 2008. That's 10 years ago. I have another major fire and several others that came in between, which is related to crime. But ladies and gentlemen, let's come back. Lira is a unique case. The society, to depart a little bit from what Onapito and Dr. Tolit have said, is not numb to this death. That's why you've had tensions running for 1.5 weeks that ended up in a demonstration yesterday. And as Nixon is telling us here, the tensions have been running for about more than 2 years. That the society hasn't been really settled for the last about 2 years. But Rosbel, let me start with you on this murder of Kembabazi, the mob's girl. What does that say about society? What does that say about, I mean, what kind of, what mind goes not just to kill, but also to ensure that the body can be destroyed by tying it on the bed, by tying that girl on the bed, and attempting, you can understand the attempt to set the house on fire was possible to kill evidence. But why tie a person you've killed on the bed?
I think it's not about the tactics the person uses to kill a person. It really goes back to the fact that we are living in a society where the powerful can get away with so much. We are, like we've already looked at all these incidents, we are not looking for closure, we are looking for erasure. That's the society we are in. Someone dies, we quickly look for how to erase that memory
and
quickly and move on. So Kembabazi's case is not an isolated case. Every day there are deaths of women. If you go and see police report 2017, the amount of domestic violence, and that is violence meted onto somebody from their own home, a place where it's supposed to be safe. So it's not only on the street or somebody you don't know is killing you. At the same time, we see increasing domestic violence, and it's about power. Who has the power? You know, who doesn't have that power? So we have to come back to the fact that there's impunity both ways, whether it's someone in the government getting away with something, whether it is somebody, a man in your home killing somebody and trying to indeed get away with it in that case.
For a
She's
woman.
not alone. Yes, she's not alone. And I say he because when I look at the police statistics, and if you go there, domestic violence disproportionately affects a certain people, children and women, and we can't. He works on it every day. So, but it doesn't mean men are not affected. But it goes back to what is happening when there's no justice in a country. You can't have peace. When people constantly want to erase something that has happened to us, don't allow us space to talk about it. Do not allow investigations to happen. Don't allow people to mourn. Don't allow people to question. Whenever you have a question, you be like, hey, there's somebody big, you know. You know, there's a saying even, you know, there's somebody big. So rest. Yes. So relax. Don't even talk about it. Erasure is the present, is a constant in our society, and we cannot stop violence if we are erasing the past violence.
Dr. Tolit, someone reminded me, someone sent a message, I think someone who knows you very well, and said, I should have added in my introduction of you that you formerly worked with the New Vision.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yes, you did.
In other places.
And many other places.
Yes. And then Nteja Simwe, Nteja, I saw your message. Nteja says this is because of poverty, which has been brought about by unemployment, especially among young people, and politics that has failed the people. Rosebell introduces something interesting about erasure, not closure. And my mind went to the women in Entebbe and Nansana that were murdered. I think the time we stopped the count, we're going about 27 women?
43 women.
43, the official count I think was about 27, but actually about 43 women murdered in what looked like serial killing style. But society is able to move on. Does this speak of a normal society? Are we a normal society? I should put it that way. What do you say?
I'd like to borrow a word without mentioning the name of a judge friend of mine I highly respect. And because he used this word, I also feel confident to use it now. One time we had a discussion, and his complaint was that this Ugandan society is an indolent society. And when he said this, a lot of questions ran to my mind. At that time, I was a research fellow in northern Uganda. And we were basically trying to understand the way people were trying to cope with the situation they had been through. And of course, one thing that is obvious is that it is sad. You know, every time these incidents happen, particularly if you look at it from the perspective of Uganda's political economy, we are diverting money that could be put in other useful areas. And we are spending money on investigations, right from police to the courts. And it's not money that we are wasting. But it is a situation that if we were able to invest otherwise, we would have circumvented.
What exactly do you mean? I don't seem to understand. I've spoken to, I do speak to police, and the investigations directorate hardly has money to run anything, to do any investigation.
No, Charles, investigations is a very expensive business, particularly in today's era. You know, in the past, you would hazard. Today, to be able to bring somebody to book, particularly in this era of technology, costs quite some money. It's an expensive venture. So the question would be, collectively, as a nation, what is our visioning? And for me, the thinking would be, let us try to invest in trying to, we can't do away with crime. Crime is part of society. The question then is the magnitude. And you know, when you raised this question to me, you said somebody attributed this to poverty. I do agree.
Yes, says poverty
I do
and
agree
employment and stuff.
I do agree it is poverty. But I would want to further problematize the issue of poverty or have an expanded definition of it. Particularly, I want to stay away from the economic or the money element. The impoverishment that I would want us to take very seriously is the impoverishment in the social areas of life. You know, when you talk about social investment, you're talking about health, you're talking about education. Now let me try to stay with education. What education are we talking about? We have such a skewed definition of education, particularly in this country. And I think that is where we are getting it all wrong. Because when you talk about education here, we are simply talking about formal education. If you look at, if you did an interrogation, for instance, of our budget expenditures and asked yourself, besides formal education, where else does money go to in education? Let me take the case of this young lady who got killed. And of course, my heart goes to the family and friends. But I would want to say, just like in many other cases where there are crimes of passion, like they're referred to in law, you find that members of society, particularly the young girls, have become so gullible. Why? They seem to be a societal trend. They seem to be a pressure. There is a specific framework of success that has been defined. And people are trying to fit in those boxes. You know, a young man who should appear successful to you, should be one with a college diploma, should be one with driving some suave car, living in a particular suburban. And we are forgetting that relationships come quite naturally. So a young girl like this will meet a man, and very soon she finds this guy does not fit within those brackets. And not even only her as an individual, but even her immediate community are pushing. This fellow you are with, is he successful? Does he fit in these boxes? So and same to the girls. So you're going to find people are walking out of relationships so quickly, you know, without even staying to appreciate each other, understand each other. And this comes with frustrations because people,
but if
you
you
know,
scale,
like
when you scale this violent crime, be it domestic violence, be it crimes of passion as you want to put it, or other ordinary crime, because I am still trying to get my head around the incident in Lira,
yes,
and understand exactly what triggered that. What are those triggers? Violent murders are happening in this country in different areas, in different forms,
Charles,
across the social strata.
yeah, and Charles,
yes,
before my thought dry out, so
yes.
to say, I think for me, earlier we of course agree there is the ecosystem or the environment. But I think now, to me, the bigger crisis we are facing in our society is breakdown of the family unit, and was extended and nuclear, and the individual being cut loose, and the individual in some cases running amok, in some cases literally. Africans are not strangers, and Ugandans are not strangers to killing. This society has always killed, but it has always killed more as a group action, either through war, mob justice. Most of the killing was in open, daytime. And this secretive killing by the individual in the privacy of a room is not African thing. Because the killing was always, if it happened, was a societal action and was approved. And there was always big eye on the individual. You are conscious of your actions. This idea that you can kill someone whom you love, first of all, if you fell in love, people would know. So, but now, because the individual is really individualized in the so-called Western sense, you can have your affair without anybody knowing, and if you kill a person, nobody will know who has killed. So the individual is no longer being watched by society because it's just a natural it's a evolution of the economic and social system, but it's a sad evolution. Many, even highly educated people are falling into this kind of crime. People who have accomplished in education and they end up killing someone because they are not restrained by family, they are not restrained by society. It's my life. Remember that statement?
Charles,
It's my life. I have my money.
A few things.
Sure.
I wanted to pick up on a few things. Us beginning from the idea that society moves on. I think society doesn't move on. We are really limping. We have not moved on. We think we have moved on, but we are limping. And that's why we are back to the same cycle of violence. And also, whoever is saying that poverty is the cause of violence, poverty in itself is violence, first and foremost. When you restrict resources that someone else can't access them, that is violence in itself. But try to say that people who are poor are violent, then we are failing to understand who is making us poor, who is actually behind this violence and making people impoverished. So we cannot say that poverty is a cause of violence because poverty in itself is violence.
To your statement, much of the white crime, this modern crime, is committed by people who are well off.
And I wanted, yes, exactly. And I wanted to move to another point where we want to talk about, commentate on social lives of people. We don't know where the victim, Kemba, was. We don't know her social life, so we should not speculate about her social life. And the idea that a person intending to get success, the idea that we aspire to become successful in our society in itself should not evoke death. We should not be dying because we want to be successful. Even if I want to be successful, there should be a society that protects me from death at least. Whatever way I'm trying to be successful, there should be safeguards in society that it does not mean that I'm dead at the end of the day.
I think I would
Yes,
want
Nixon.
to come in here. I think Ugandans need to be very careful the way we are beginning to redefine this death, crime and all this that is happening. First and foremost, these are violation of rights. But how many understand that? But the worst that is at the core is what is driving us is the neoliberal mindset and agenda, which is actually being run by the political elite who believe that they almost own people who should actually be seen as laborers with very little residual rights. And these are the people, when they go through violation, some arm is cut off in a factory, you actually can hardly follow through such a case and see how it is handled well. Just because this person is on the lower end in terms of power status in the country. And this is happening not just because somebody is an Asian, but because the person is well positioned and they have money and power. So we are beginning to see capital.
Yes,
we are beginning
how
to see.
does that relate to the president held a meeting the other day with the Chinese ambassador to Uganda? Reason, Chinese business people, investors, are being targeted. And the reason they're being targeted, not necessarily because they have abused those who work with them, but because somebody thinks they have money that they want to take to walk away with. There was a Chinese lady who was murdered I think about 2 years ago in somewhere in Mukono. And it was captured on CCTV camera when they went in because they were demanding for money. So it's not unique to this Asian community in Lira, for example,
No.
and the death of this young boy Okello.
But we
No,
had
exactly.
an accountant of Case Clinic murdered. So it's not necessarily about investors
you have
or whoever.
Ekalungar, who was picked from Case Hospital here, murdered. And actually, one of the most horrific things that happened is that you find at the end of the day, when they're looking for his body, they find it was burnt on a roadside with logs of fire that were still there. you just can't, you just can't come to understand how this happens, that you find someone had the time to collect those logs, transport them to where they transported them, transport the body, or maybe a live person, and set them on fire there.
That is the individual I'm
see,
telling you
Charles
has run
and
amok.
colleagues,
This
as
is not
long
a
as-
control individual.
As long as our development trajectory is not paying attention to the increasing parity in terms of income. You know, when you look at it, the Gini coefficient is becoming bigger. What does that mean? While the economy is reported to be growing,
Generally.
but those who are actually benefiting from it are actually fewer. The people who are falling into chronic poverty is increasing. That is our data, and we all know this. And what does that mean? That means, therefore, that we are setting the society against itself. The government programs that are supposed to reduce these margins is not actually impactful. No, they are not. So that alone, therefore, means that crime for people to look for survival is there. Leave alone those who are just being criminal not to survive. Crime for survival is increasing. Secondly, I think we talked about system earlier. Our investigations are never concluded well in such a way that it would make people feel that justice
Has been done.
And these are being bottled up by the poor people. Now, when these poor people are still also the youth, Lira, the strongest movement in town that really were violent were street children. They were saying, Okello was a child like us. And now they don't want us even to mourn. And it was them, not even mobilized by people could talk about politics. No. So I think that unless we look at social justice as what we must invest in, right from the family, looking at the different who has got power in a family, in a clan, in a political system, and all that. And we ensure that leaders are actually looking at how to bring in respiration and all those. We are not going anywhere. Otherwise, people are getting back to their tribal conclaves as a way of saying, I think we shall now mobilize ourselves.
Based on our...
Yes, which is a wrong thing. We are actually going back to beyond the independence level. When people now begin to think that let's organize ourselves as the Bagisu in order to address these issues of landslides, and there's what is not being addressed. You go to Lango, they say we'll mobilize ourselves as Langi. And then you will go to Teso, where he is just back from. There are issues like that. It is because we are not listening to the voices of the marginalized within us.
Ona, let me come to you. There's a photo that's been making the rounds on social media lately, I think over the last about 2 days. And that photograph is of this country's Deputy Attorney General walking with an AK-47.
Not a metallic walking stick?
No, the Honorable Moise Gwarukutana with an AK-47 with 2 magazines tied together through a farm, because there's cattle in the background. And the question is, some people are joking and asking, is he grazing the cattle with an AK-47? We thought that was confined somewhere in Karamoja before, but that before the pacification. And some of the exercises, some of the responses I have read were to the effect that, he was actually doing target shooting, learning target shooting on his farm. And the issue is, how does he protect himself? He's being proactive to provide his own personal security even before. He's well guarded with guards at home and on the road and at the office. And I've been trying to contextualize this with the discussion we're having today. Can security be personalized in the face of increasing violent crime? what does this say about at what state, in what state is this society? You remember there was a debate in Parliament, I think some members of Parliament saying ministers no longer drive in the official cars, they drive in the escort cars because they are afraid that they will be targeted if they were driving in the official cars. Now you see a minister working with an AK-47 in hand.
Well, I hope it will be the beginning of what the Americans call the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I'm one of the strongest believers in the right to bear arms because most of the time, the people who are killing, at least with guns, are carrying illegal guns. And they kill those who have not perhaps done anything.
Without complete investigations, we wouldn't know that maybe they're getting them out of official armory.
Even if you fear that it's coming from official armory, I think the Americans, in their version, were trying also to disarm the state from using violence against citizens. They are prepared for a day when the citizens could actually rise against the army, maybe with nuclear weapons. It may not be sustainable. But I have no problem with a minister having a gun, so long as he's licensed and he has no intention to kill anyone, maybe only his cow. So, and I believe so many other Ugandans...
They don't shoot cows, you know
so many, this is a very controversial topic globally, but I'm a believer in the right to bear arms because I think people who respect the law, who really have no intention of killing anyone, should have the right to protect themselves. And
But
one of the ways of protect, even traditionally, just hold on, I'm making my point.
How many people would be able to actually access the gun legally and afford it? It will still go to
that's now a different thing.
Well, I think I would agree with him. That will be a different discussion.
Weapons of self-defense have traditionally been there. They have only varied.
But are we here to defend the symbolic image? You know, at a time when the country is tense about security, everybody is afraid of their security.
A gun is both a symbol of you can say violence, that's negative, but also protection.
No, a gun, any protection that you need from a gun points to negative things that is in a country. And I think we should not avoid the symbolic nature, this image, and why it evokes so much feedback from the nation at a time when we are struggling to have our own safety.
When you look at that incident, I believe in Ntungamo, and the incident in Lira, and this incident in Bugolobi, they tie to the tension in the country. Trying to understand the cause, the nerve center, the center of that tension is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, but
to understand this society, there must be something fundamentally.
I know people are maybe not outraged, this is maybe a strong word, they may think it's not good for a minister to be carrying a gun, but I think there's nothing wrong with a minister or any citizen carrying a licensed weapon. It would perhaps be one of the ways of fighting crime.
No.
If you're going to discuss the Attorney General's appearance with a gun as an individual, then you're missing the point. He's the attorney, is the Deputy Attorney General of the country at a time when people are feeling all these pressures. There are killings in the country, and actually General Sejusa kind of trolled in that image and chipped in and said, you people are missing the point. The president said we should provide sharpshooters, all these people, so that they feel, you know, bringing it back, bringing it back to the situation that like people are trying to secure themselves. Who is going to secure Ugandans?
Taking a break, and I want to just put this to Anapito before we put a break. How do you contrast that image with the image of this girl in Bugolobi? How do you contrast them?
Because you see the helplessness of that lady.
Yeah, I mean, of course you can't compare, but I'm saying perhaps
their powers.
Perhaps if she was armed and trained, she could have defended herself. That's also one of the options. Because helplessness can also be counter. You can help yourself by being armed.
We need to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll understand. I hope we can make sense of this in a way that helps us understand where society is with this rising violent crime in the country. And what exactly is at the center of it. Fortunately, I should say, we had intended to have police representation on the show, but I think sometimes it's also important that the police can watch and see where it is supposed to be doing and what they're not doing. Because I think sometimes they are overwhelmed. They can conclude investigations, there are many centers that are doing different.
That seems to
levels.
be all the time. They're overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah, because if if things are happening the way they're happening, what would you expect? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll be concluding this discussion. Welcome back. I'll ask our production team to put the number on your screen so that you can call us and share with us your views about this rising violent crime in Uganda. I'll take some messages. Gift in Nansana says, as a country, we have become more detached from each other and from common unifying beliefs, and without being connected to others. We care less for their welfare, and because of that, we are less likely to be aggressive. We are less likely to be aggressive or violent to others in our community. When individuals become isolated, marginalized, and without some connection to those around them, violence increases. As a country, we have allowed hateful ideologies to make groups or classes of people who are viewed as different and more important than others, while the rest are looked at as bad or even less human. And this has increased violence. A study dubbed Global Violent Death 2017 by Small Arms Survey indicated that in 2016, interpersonal and collective violence claimed the lives of 560,000 people around the world. About 385,000 of them were the victims of international homicides. 99,000 were casualties of war, and the rest died in unintentional homicides or due to legal interventions. The responsibility of having a society free from violence starts with me and you. We have a caller. Hello? Hello? Okay, we lost that one. Hello, we have a caller? Hello? We lost that one as well. If the phone is going to be a problem, maybe we leave it and ask people to send us messages. Hello? 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 Yes, we can hear there's someone on the phone, but... Okay, I think the phone is going to be a problem. Let's encourage people to share their views on our social media platforms, or send messages that you can scroll at the bottom. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm you're calling from.
Yes, please keep your comment or question brief.
Yes, sometimes I have a feeling that one is joking.
Uh-huh.
Because the whole Attorney General with a gun moving around the cows, it's funny. But the other thing you were talking about of our failure to protect ourselves and the state killing each other, I think the problem is also with the parenting. Our parents completely abandoned us. They all grew up from this problem. I'm towards 40. We are keeping our neighbors looked at us as the children of the community. But today, everybody's minding his own business. And it's very funny. You'll find the parent, when you try like push a neighbor's child, he will ask you if you know how the child feels. And this child does not belong to the parent. He belongs to the community. So we all look at ourselves as we do not mind about each other. I think that how we have degenerated somehow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Someone watching us here says, Joseph Burite says, in any case, let's admit we are a violent society. No amount of state capacity building will ever rein us in. Blame on poverty is misplaced, considering poorer societies like Zanzibar go years without hearing of a mugging. Solution, like Onapito says, establish a constitutional right to bear arms so each citizen can guard their own and against political tyranny. Joseph Brite. He says, in any case, it's already happening. Going by the surging members of private security guards, we live in denial when we ignore these trends. Hello? Hello? Is there someone on the phone? Okay, if we can't get him or her, we'll continue. Linus Ngompek says, why do all bad things on us happen in religious countries, while Asian countries who are Buddhists and others who believe in cows and earthly things are peaceful and prospering? Why? Or are young people overwatching violent movies? Well, Linus, I think Buddhism is also a religion. And worshipping of cows and other things is also religion. Religion is not just Christianity and Islam. Hello?
This is Edson calling from Zambia.
Yes, please.
There's an issue that you guys are quite ignoring. We've had these deaths coming time after time.
Yes.
Being from Kasese, I've seen how people are maimed and killed. I've seen how people in Bunduja are killed. We've seen sheikhs die. Broad daylight, moreover. We've had issues of these murders, and all of them go unresolved. What is happening? People have known that they can get away with crime no matter what it is. Always the wrong people are arrested, tortured just to cover up somebody else. So unless this is sorted, I think we'll be really having a way forward. Police should up their game, investigate to the real end. Without that, there is no way we can move forward in this country.
Thank you. So someone is asking on some group if I'm a guest or a moderator. I don't know what the basis of that question is. Please, sir, if you can resend the message and ask me a clear question, I should be able to give you an answer. Someone said, okay, sorry, I meant God. Linus Ngompech correcting the message he had sent earlier. Let me take a message from Nteja Sima, came back to us and said, what is an indolent? I think that was for Dr. Tolit. Indolent society. Always, he's asking me to always tell my guests to use simple, to use fairly simple English language. Please, Dr. Tolit. Hello, we have a caller. Hello?
Use simple language.
Hello. Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from? Do you have your phone, I mean your TV set on? Please turn it off, or I mean turn down the volume so that we can hear you. We are getting an echo. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from? Hello, sir. I'm being told that you might also... Yes, sir?
I'm getting the chance.
Yes, now we can get you. Now we can hear you. Okay, please turn down the volume on your TV set when you're calling, so that you don't give us an echo. Nteje says, bullseye, Mr. Napito. One professor from Makerere earlier this week said that this generation has been raised by housemaids because parents have chosen to be busy. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, sir? We can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Sir, there is a problem. Maybe you're overlooking it.
Which one?
There are so many people in Uganda who are not Ugandans. They come in, they go out every time they want. If you ask the chairman of a village, he doesn't even know. Like in town, he doesn't know how many people live in the villages. What I'm saying, even the government people, those guys, they don't even know how many people are in Uganda. How do you expect?
That's why the
what has that got to do with the rising violent crime? Because surely some of these, locating the perpetrators and the victims is not very difficult. There's a good idea on some of these killings, not necessarily perpetrated by what you call people who are not Ugandans. Yes, sir.
No, I was saying, like, if they knew exactly how many people are coming in Uganda, how many people are in the city, how many people, because when we are growing up, me, I'm a young man, but when we were growing up, at least we knew our neighbors, we knew people we used to live with, we knew, but these days, I'm telling you, we don't even know our neighbors.
Okay.
So I think that's, it needs a security check too.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, do you need security or an order from your local police station to know your neighbor? Why don't we know our neighbors? Let me throw that.
But
here,
I
because
think he has.
I think that's Dr. Tolit.
He has a point before Doctor. He has a point. I think in one of the challenges, especially in the urban areas, is that the police and the authorities just don't know who lives. And of course, first of all, the city, in the case of Kampala, the road system is so disorganized, the settlements are so disorganized, so you can't even tell exactly where people just emerge. In the morning, they are walking into the city, some are driving in, they drive out. So the profile of the average population in the city, I don't think is
But I also
fairly
think
known.
that
That's quite a big challenge.
the elite in the city, if I were to talk about it, have addressed this issue in a way that has made them islands. Because now they say, okay, there's insecurity, what do? They build longer walls now and put razor wires and electrify it. So how is this boy who is calling going to know these neighbors? They come out of those vehicles in armored cars which have already been tinted, and if they try to look at them twice, the security threat. While where Okello was killed, they still know the neighbors. So and yet Okello was still killed.
I hear you. I think you make a very valid point. But Dr. Tolita, I'd put this to you. It is this crime that drove society not just to building walls, but to raising the walls and putting them higher. So it's a response mechanism. And you'll find this in countries that have high rates of crime. You'll find this in South Africa very much. They build very high walls. They're electrified. You'll find this in many parts of Nairobi. You'll find this growing in Kampala. You'll find this being extended to towns in Soroti. People are building walls around their homes. In Amuria, people are building walls around their homes. In Imbarara, in Bushenyi, in Bundebujo. Yes,
place.
Exactly. People are beginning, this is a response mechanism. So we didn't just arrive here by accident. We arrived here because of a certain process. Would you help me understand? Respond to the call. Said we don't know our neighbors.
Yes, it's true. We don't know our neighbors. And we are faced with circumstances that are explainable. Initially, when we started the show, our good sister here alluded to, for instance, the police crime reports. And if you peruse through these reports, they are traces. They are indicators that begin to form. For instance, I'll take the issue of land. Land has become a very contentious matter in this country at the moment. And forget about the politics around it. But let us stay with the crime. If you looked at crime committed around land, and which most often leads to either death or very serious injuries, you will find that a piece of land is at the center of it. The contestants are known, and usually it takes a path that people have been haggling over this piece of land for a time. The question then, therefore, is there anything wrong within our mechanism to try and resolve, these conflicts? That could be one. The other is that the people who get drawn into these conflicts, are they self-cautious or are they not? Okay. The third would be, are the images, like they say, war begets war? Is it also possible that the images of violence that have lived around us for a long time have turned us into such macho individuals? Are we that daring? But for me, the central point is, if we are to get confidence in our people, then we have to start with the systems. If people get to begin to believe in a simple police intervention, if people get to begin to believe in the presence of a man in uniform you know, as a true arbiter in a situation that you're confronted with, I think we shall begin to pick our pieces. The question, you know, the begging question therefore is, where is the point of departure? Because the timeline of our conflicts are clear to us. You know,
I think,
71.
Doctor, for me, we can't divorce what is happening in the country to the political crisis we have. And sometimes when people hear the word political crisis, they think it's about the president in power. Yeah. But when you go down to the village, up to the level, the political crisis is there. Before we even jump to the police officer, what are the chances that when you go to your LC1 to the LC2, before you even engage the police to magnify that conflict, if you're a rich man and I'm a poor woman, what are the chances that I will get justice? Even before we even go to the securitized nature of the security sector. So you cannot divorce from the workings of the police, how it is failing. We kind of hound it. We don't realize it's a systemic, it's a symptomic of the workings of our political system that is failing all of us. And someone saying they don't know their neighbor, it is not by accident, it's by design. I don't know your neighbor because you're not in the same, you're not in the same bar. You do not, your children don't go to the same school. You're really in a segregation.
You do not have an opportunity
What do you
to
talk
meet
about?
as parents.
The inequality, yes, the inequality.
Where you share the same services.
Charles,
you do not meet at the local health facility where both of you get these services.
There's no public facility.
But guys, it's more serious than that.
It's
more serious than that. Even within families now, people don't know each other. So to say.
Yes, but
So
have
it
you
doesn't
also
have to be
thought?
economic interest.
But have we also thought, bringing this to the police again, that what is the ratio of the civil police to the civilian that they serve, and how much do they know of that community, so that their response is based on the understanding of the community that and the context that they're policing. Why I bring this and I bring it back to what we are discussing.
The question somebody would ask,
yes,
is there a community to understand?
Yes, there is.
Which is that community that
For instance, the community of the young Okello, who was being buried yesterday, was a community in Alito that needed to be understood and protected by police to mourn and bury. In Lango, by the way, the day when they bury, they will not do anything to anybody who killed. That is their belief. So it was mismanaged. The police did not understand that culture. Yet, when we were burying the late Kiromira, there was more tension, but police behaved in a better way.
Yeah.
They understood. Even the minister ran away barefooted.
Even the police heads ran away.
They did the right thing. So what we are trying to say is that right now...
compare that. You've drawn two examples.
Yes.
Add in a third example of the burial of Ibrahim Abirga.
Yes.
6 people were killed.
Now, but you see... Yes, but you can see that learning from Arua, I could feel that police did a little better response with Kiromira, which was even tougher. Then the little Okello, they mismanaged and so many were shot.
I think the idea that we don't have a community is the lack of understanding how communities are evolving.
Exactly.
Because the crime is not only in Kampala. People were killed in Masaka when people were leaving letters. 2 weeks ago, people left letters for the journalists, 12 journalists in Masaka, that they were going to be killed. Right now, they are living under fear. So it is not happening just in urban centers where we are all living. Okay. People were killed in Masaka, letters in villages. Tensions were in villages where people know each other. So we cannot really center it on me knowing my neighbor.
Would you then say that has shaped the way we discuss crime? Not just here, but elsewhere. Dr. Tolita, I can see you shaking your head.
You see, what is interesting in all this is that this is a society we live in. And we have to draw lessons from within this society. And when I was trying to make all these appropriations of, you know, the man in uniform, the badge, respect for it, you know, somebody was challenging me for using a fairly big word, so to speak, when I said
indolent.
We are indolent. Much more simply said is that as a people we need to be more civic. We need to be up to demand what is due to us. And this is not happening. You know, we are talking about these communities and saying we do not know each other. I mean, government is not going to come to organize, you know, a small group in a town ward or in a parish. It's only human that, you know, if you met somebody across the village path, you're going to say hello and exchange some niceties. But today...
Or question where they're coming from.
Yes, and even indirectly, even if after they left, you could ask the next person, who is that? We are not watchful at all. Let me tell you, I've had incidents. I've had a side mirror peaked or something, and you ask the next guy, and he tells you, I didn't see anybody. You know? So, as a people, are we visioning, you know, this Uganda we are talking about? Just at what point? Where is the point of departure? You know, we talk of independence every year. Individually, if you asked, yes, we're celebrating independence. What does independence mean? What is independence for us? Is it a celebration? Is it a commemoration? You know, these terminologies evoke different understanding or responses. So as a people, have we got to a point where, you know, sociologically, philosophically, we have decided this is where we want to go? Because crime is not unique to us.
We'll continue
in Kenya,
to debate that. I'm afraid we got to get out of here. Time is pretty much short. We need to bring this to an end. Anthony is watching us from somewhere in the United States and says, first, development and opportunity have to be fairly distributed. The point I think you guys were raising here. Then government must invest in good investigative techniques and must hire the best people on merit. Investigations must be complete. Good. Justice must be served and seen to be served. Backlog of cases in courts, corruption, etc. don't help at all. Something has to be done.
The point is, Charles,
let me finish this message.
Who will bring about all that?
Let me finish this message.
You are talking about the same people who are coming from a dysfunctional society, going through so-called education, ascending into offices.
No. I think if we go with that idea that the whole country is dysfunctional.
Well, Honor, you didn't allow me to finish reading the message before you come in.
Just a moment. Me down. Yes. Why did I allow you now?
Well, you didn't allow me. Okay. In the United States,
you guys want to listen
just a
to
moment. In the United States, gun-related violence is a menace. More than 30,000 people die in the USA in gun-related violence and other homicides per year. That's about 90 people per day. That's so gun ownership for all isn't necessarily the answer. In fact, in a less organized society like ours, it could lead to much more problems. This is somebody's views. Someone says, it's absurd. These days, everybody is an expert, even those who have no clue on anything. Uganda should stop politicizing everything. Let us allow the experts to do their work, like our friends. Okay. Everyone is a consultant. OMG. We'll contextualize that message later. Madam Kagumire should not bully those men. Let the men also present their opinions to the end.
No, this is not bullying us.
Anthony Maseki says, Charles, crime will always be there in society. That's crucial. What's crucial is the state's ability to protect lives and property. That ability is a political question. Lack of meaningful commitment to protect rights and brings offenders to justice is encouraging impunity for crimes. That's Anthony Maseke's view. We pretty much run out of time.
Well,
conclude your thoughts.
Let me conclude. I'm saying you're emphasizing so much systems, political, the right decisions. I'm only saying the individuals before they are sent into those offices come from a certain society. And I think there is enough evidence that people actually don't change. So it's even worse when they get to position of authority and they are from a background that does not first of all respect authority. They are unlikely to actually instill the kind of systems we are creating. So for me, the family unit, the basic societal system, is the long-term solution. Because you are having people in the armed forces, for example, who are delinquent before they join the armed forces. And they are unlikely to change even after training. And there are people who have gone up to university, ascended to public office, they are delinquent as young people, and
Some
of them are leading corruption.
Let me ask you a simple question. Can this society correct itself? What would it take?
It can.
What would it take?
I think I agree with the general idea. One, you need economic equality, so to say, because often I see, like in the Western world, this mass response to a shooting, because you are dealing with people who, first of all, are sort of at the same level. So the level of cynicism is fairly limited. There is a common feeling. But now here, some people are so cynical. They are really living, their lives are so wretched that death does not really change a lot. They are
Dr.
living
Tolit,
a deathly life every other day. You know?
I'll give a minute to each one of you because we need to get out of here.
No, for me, very, very, very shortly, I definitely think we still have a huge chance as a people, because we have a history, we have a culture, we have different cultures in this country that we can draw upon and leverage on the best. And it's only important that our education as a people needs to become expansive to include also understanding our own surroundings and being able to have people who can draw lessons, you know, from our own history. And that is how we can shape our future and guarantee, you know, justice and peace going forward.
Rosbeth.
I think as a nation, we are socially tied together. This idea that somehow we are not a community is actually, I don't agree with it. I think that you have to tackle the systemic things that we are seeing. Inequality, you have to tackle that. The ineffective police justice system, it has to be tackled. And the idea that we are all somehow gone cases, that we can't help this, I don't believe that. That's why we say there are people, good people in these systems who are still holding them together somehow, even with the bad we are seeing. There are still good people in there.
Nixon Ogwal.
All lives in Uganda matters. Be it a woman, a child, an investor, local or international, they all matter. And they must be served justice. All lives matter. Therefore, we must invest to secure everyone within our borders.
Okay. A long message here, I think, from Wamboga Mugeya, who says, do you know that Karamojongs allegedly accused Uganda of being their worst neighbor? They accuse Uganda of carrying out intrusion in their land, disarming them and exposing them to vulnerable to armed Kenyans and Sudanese groups, forcing them to wear clothes in a rough, hot environment, and also roughening them up in their land. On rising crime violence, violent crime, as long as there is widening socioeconomic disparity among citizens. The same applies to politics, and many times even foreigners met out violence against Ugandans. Many issues are stifled and at grassroots, but one of the ways to fight crime is need to reinstate special branch in the police. Well, think about this. Kenya was horrified by the death caused following the fallout of the 2007 December elections in 2008. The total number of deaths in Kenya is slightly above 1,000. But if you had that number killed in Kanungu in 2001, March 17, 2001, and that report has never been produced for anybody to read, surely you can't expect a newspaper here to be putting...
You cut your coats according to your clothes.
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much to you, all our viewers, for joining us tonight, and especially those who gave us feedback, and each one who watches this show and stays up late to watch the show. The debate continues on our social media platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on WhatsApp. Thank you very much to our production crew that stays up late to bring you this show. And from me, it's a good night.